My name is Elena, and I'm 33 years old. My sister Maya is 26. That age gap doesn't sound like much when people hear it. 7 years. Barely anything. But when you grow up the way we did, 7 years might as well be a lifetime. 7 years is the difference between learning how to survive quietly and learning how to perform loudly. 7 years is the difference between being taught to hold things together and being taught that someone else always will. She told me not to come while she was putting on lipstick. It was red. It was always red when she wanted to feel untouchable. "Don't come tonight," she said, leaning toward the mirror, carefully tracing the edge of her mouth. "My friends get uncomfortable when you're there." She didn't look at me when she said it. She didn't need to. She already knew how it would land. She already knew what kind of person I was, the kind who absorbs impact instead of reflecting it. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside the window. Our apartment. The one with my name first on the lease. The one I had found when she called me crying, saying she needed to get out of her old place because it was killing her energy. I was standing by the doorway to her room, holding a folded jacket I had picked up from the couch earlier. One of hers. I had meant to put it away before she noticed and sighed about how messy everything always was. I didn't move. I didn't ask which friends. I didn't ask what I had done to make them uncomfortable. I didn't remind her that they drank the wine I bought, sat on the couch I paid for, laughed under the lights I kept on. I just said, okay. One word. Calm. Level. The kind of calm that only comes from someone who has learned that reacting loudly never changes the outcome. She paused. I saw it in the mirror, the slightest tightening of her eyebrows. She turned her head just enough to look at me properly, like she was reassessing something she thought she understood. Okay, she repeated. Yes, I said. Okay. She studied my face for a moment, searching for guilt or hurt or anger. Something she could use to reassure herself that she was still in control of the situation. When she didn't find it, she shrugged. Good, she said. I just think it's better this way. Better for who, she didn't say. She went back to applying her makeup, already moving on. Talking about the event like the conversation we had just had was a logistical detail, not a line she had crossed. She talked about the venue, the music, the people who mattered. She talked about how important this night was for her, how it could open doors, how she needed everything to be right. I listened. I always listened. Inside me, something very old settled into place. I had been waiting for a moment like this longer than I wanted to admit. Not consciously. Not in a way I could point to and say, yes, this is it. But in the way your body braces before a storm it's seen before. In the way muscles tense before impact. I didn't go to my room right away. I waited until she finished getting ready. Until she walked past me, heels clicking sharply against the floor. Until she grabbed her bag and checked her reflection one last time in the hallway mirror. You sure you're fine? She asked, already halfway out the door. I nodded. She smiled. Relief softened her face. Relief that I wasn't going to make this harder. Relief that she didn't have to explain me. The door closed behind her. I stood there for a moment, listening to her footsteps fade down the hallway. Listening to the building settle around me. Listening to the quiet she had left behind like an afterthought. Then I went into my room and closed the door. I sat on the edge of the bed and let myself breathe. Controlled anger doesn't explode. It tightens. It sharpens. It strips things down to what actually matters. I had lived long enough in Maya's orbit to know that if I let myself feel everything at once, I'd drown in it. So I didn't. I stood up and opened my laptop. The bank account was exactly where I had left it. The one she thought we shared equally. The one she had never bothered to learn how to access properly. The one I funded, managed, and quietly stabilized month after month. I moved the money. Not in a rush. Not with shaking hands. Every transfer deliberate. Every number checked twice. I left behind what she could reasonably argue was hers. I took everything else, the emergency fund, the buffer, the quiet safety net she never acknowledged but always relied on. When I was done, I closed the laptop. Then I opened my closet. I didn't pack everything. I packed only what belonged to me. Clothes I bought with my own paycheck. Shoes worn thin from commuting. Documents. Files. The small lockbox with things she never noticed because she had never needed to. In the kitchen, I unplugged the espresso machine I had bought for her birthday because she said mornings were impossible without good coffee. I left hers. The cheap one she ordered on impulse and abandoned because it ruined the aesthetic. I canceled the streaming services, transferred the utilities, scheduled the internet shut-off for midnight. I didn't slam cabinets. I didn't cry. I didn't rush. This wasn't an escape. It was a withdrawal. I sent a single word to a number saved under a name she had never paid attention to. Now. Then I kept packing. By the time the movers arrived, the apartment already felt like it had exhaled. They worked quickly, professionally. I told them exactly what to take and what to leave. No questions asked. Everything that was mine went with me. Everything she depended on without noticing stayed just long enough to make the absence undeniable. I took one last look around before I left. The couch. The rug. The photos on the wall, mostly of her, mostly taken by people who called her inspiring while sitting comfortably in the life I maintained. I didn't touch them. I closed the door behind me and didn't lock it. I wanted her to walk into the truth without obstacles. My phone buzzed as I was pulling away. One missed call. Then another. Then messages. Where are you? Why is the power out? Is this some kind of joke? I didn't answer. I waited. I waited until the tone changed. Until irritation gave way to confusion. Until confusion thinned into panic. Why is your room empty? Why can't I log into the account? Elena, answer me. I answered on the fifth call. What did you do? She demanded. Her voice was sharp, cracking at the edges. All your stuff is gone. Are you seriously pulling this right now? I kept my voice steady. Don't worry, I said. Now you won't have to explain me to anyone ever again. I hung up. I blocked the number. And for the first time in years, the silence that followed didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like relief. I didn't become this version of myself overnight. People like to believe that women like me are born cold, that we come into the world already guarded, already stiff with responsibility. That it's just our nature to be dependable, to be steady, to be the one who doesn't fall apart. But that's not how it works. You learn it. Slowly. Through repetition. Through watching what happens when you don't step in. I learned early that if I didn't hold things together, no one else would. When Maya was little, she followed me everywhere. I was the one who braided her hair for school when our mother was too tired. I was the one who walked her home when she was scared. I was the one who learned how to cook simple meals because someone had to. 7 years isn't much on paper, but in a house where adulthood arrives early, 7 years turns into authority, responsibility, expectation. By the time I was a teenager, I knew how to make myself useful. I knew how to disappear into the background so things could keep moving. I knew how to anticipate needs before they were voiced. Those skills followed me into adulthood, into work, into relationships, and eventually, into the shared apartment with my younger sister who had learned a very different lesson. Maya learned that the world responds to confidence, to charm, to being seen. When she decided she wanted to move out, she didn't ask how she would afford it. She asked where she should live. When she chose the apartment, she chose it for the light, the location, the feeling. I chose it for the rent, the lease terms, the likelihood that the landlord wouldn't raise the price in the first year. We both signed the lease. I paid the deposit. At first, living together felt like a second chance. Like maybe this time, as adults, the imbalance would even out. I told myself that she'd grow into responsibility once she had space to breathe. I told myself that support was temporary, that she just needed a runway. But runways don't mean much if the plane never intends to take off. She worked when she felt inspired. She quit when she felt restricted. She talked about projects that never materialized, connections that never followed through, opportunities that were always just one conversation away. I didn't judge her out loud. I didn't mock her dreams. I listened. I encouraged. I filled the gaps. I paid the bills when she was short. I covered utilities when she forgot. I handled the landlord when something broke. I handled the internet provider when the service cut out. I handled the forms, the renewals, the emails she hated because they made her feel boxed in. She called me practical. She meant boring. Slowly, the language shifted. It always does before the behavior becomes obvious. She stopped saying, "Thank you." She started saying, "Obviously." Obviously, I'd cover it. Obviously, I'd handle it. Obviously, I understood how hard things were for her. When friends came over, she played the role of the self-made woman, the hustler, the creative force. She talked about how independence mattered to her, how she'd never rely on anyone. She talked about boundaries and autonomy while drinking wine I bought and sitting on furniture I paid for. I stood in the kitchen, refilling glasses. If someone asked what I did, she'd answer for me before I could open my mouth. She'd simplify it. Frame it like a choice I made because I didn't want more. Like stability was a consolation prize I had settled for. I didn't correct her. Correcting her would have meant disrupting the image she was so carefully constructing, and for a long time, I still believed it was my job to protect her, even from the truth. The disrespect didn't come in a single blow. It came in fragments. In the way she'd sigh when I reminded her of deadlines. In the way she'd joke about me being the mom of the apartment. In the way she'd tell me I worried too much, that I needed to loosen up, that I was too serious for someone my age. She said those things like they were personality traits, not the result of years spent being the only adult in the room. Her friends reinforced it. They called me intense. They called me rigid. They called me old-fashioned. They told her she deserved more excitement, more freedom, more ease. None of them asked who paid the rent. None of them asked who made sure the fridge was stocked. None of them asked who absorbed the consequences when Maya chased the next feeling instead of the next paycheck. I noticed when she stopped inviting me places. At first, it was subtle. A missed message. A last-minute change of plans. Then it became normal. She'd come home glowing, buzzing with stories she didn't share, energy she didn't bring back into our shared space. I became the thing she returned to, not the thing she included. She started talking about chosen family. She said blood didn't mean obligation. She said people should stay because they want to, not because they feel responsible. I listened to those words and felt something inside me harden. Because responsibility had never been a feeling for me. It had been a role. The night she told me not to come wasn't the first time she'd erased me. It was just the first time she said it out loud. The first time she chose image over blood without pretending otherwise. The first time she made it clear that my presence wasn't just unnecessary, it was inconvenient. That was the moment everything finally aligned. Not in a dramatic way. In a quiet, undeniable way. Like a lock clicking into place. I wasn't angry because she chose her friends. I was angry because she believed she could do that while still standing on what I provided. And I was done being the foundation that everyone forgot was there until it cracked.